Sorry. I want to make sure that we have this for our legacy. For me personally, tonight's webinar is an opportunity to honor my former teacher and mentor, a scholar whose work and life has touched and inspired so many people who are here tonight. A distinguished professor emerita, the former president of the American Anthropological Association, a founding member of the Association of Black Anthropologists, a former counselor of the American Ethnological Society, Dr. Leith Mullings was an accomplished intellectual leader and scholar whose work explored the foundations of class and racial oppression and the intersectionality of race, class, and gender. She was an activist and public intellectual who worked tirelessly to combat racism and all forms of social inequality locally and globally. Leith mentored, worked, and inspired a generation of scholars, several of whom join us tonight to honor her legacy and continue her work towards a more just and equitable society. Moderating our discussion tonight is Dr. Lynn Bolles, a professor in the Department of Women's Studies and an affiliate faculty member in Anthropology, African American Studies, Comparative Literature, and American Studies at the University of Maryland, College Park. Our panelists include Dr. Patricia Tovar, a professor in the Anthropology Department of John Jay College and the CUNY Graduate Center, Dr. Javiela Evangelista, assistant professor in the African American Studies Department at the New York City College of Technology, Dr. Pamela, Calla, a clinical associate professor at the Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies at New York University. Before I turn the mic over to Dr. Bolles, I encourage everyone attending tonight to join the American Ethnological Society. We are putting the link in the chat. As the oldest section of the AAA, the AES is very much shaped by the people who join it and chart its course. We encourage you to bring your ideas and energy to the AES to make us a dynamic and inspiring association. I also want to thank all of you who are joining us tonight to celebrate and honor Leith Mullings. We are particularly honored by family members who have joined us, including Leith's daughter, Dr. Aaliyah Tyner, and her son, Mike Tyner, and Leith's siblings, Paul, Pauline, Pansy, and Sandra Mullings. We are truly honored to welcome you here. Finally, I would like to thank Rafael Munilla, a current student in the CUNY Anthropology program who has skillfully assisted in all kinds of behind-the-scenes planning and logistics. I greatly appreciate his help. And Lynn, I will now turn the mic over to you.
Good evening, everyone. I just had to make sure that the glare was not on my back here. I wanted to welcome you following what Kate has warmly invited you into this discussion. And that's what we would actually like to do is after the way we structured this is to have a conversation. And this will be, so each speaker will give about 10 minutes or less discussion. And we'll begin beginning with Patricia Tovar, then Javiela Evangelista, and then Pamela, Calla. And part of this interesting way is that it's kind of not only a chronological order of when they met Leith and where they fall into this tremendous list of former students who are now incredible leaders in the field, that she laid out for them, that they happily followed her lead and joined the ranks of those who care as activists, scholars, teachers, writers who in fact are concerned with the human condition, health disparities, ending oppression, and all the things that Dr. Mullings advocated in her classroom, in her activism, and so forth. Taking 2 seconds, everyone has their when did I meet Leith moment. I met Leith when I was in graduate school. She was a baby professor. In that particular moment, she was actually melding her understanding of not only race and class, but how in fact gender gender was factoring into all of these situations. And so it started off with her concern about her own childcare problems. And then she goes, yeah, but this has to do with what? Me being a woman, me having to do with gendered systems that are oppressive and doubling on because I'm a Black woman and then because of. And so all of these things kind of came together, and this is how we met in the mid 1970s. And then just like Kate, I too was the counselor of the AES. My meetings were in 1996, and my meetings were luckily in San Juan, Puerto Rico, which was a wonderful experience. So without further ado, let me turn it over. I'm going to be doing some timing, I believe, to make sure that we have enough time for people to have comments, comments, concerns, and to join us in this momentous occasion. So first, Patricia.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everybody. Well, thank you for the opportunity to participate in this event, honoring the life of Leith Mullings, my dear friend, teacher, and mentor. Thank you, Kate, for the invitation. And thank you for being here. I see so many familiar faces and friends from all times here. How do you capture the texture and depth of a great person in 10 minutes? I will try to do that today, but in talking about Leith, I have to talk about myself. I am who I am because of her. I will briefly center my words of infinite gratitude for Leith around 3 aspects: our personal relationship, her mentoring, and her teaching. When my mother died 2 months ago, I immediately thought, I should call Leith and let her know. Then I realized Leith was gone. I needed her support and she wasn't there. In a short period of time, I had lost 2 important figures in my life. She was a magnanimous soul. She always had a kind word, and always she had words of encouragement. She was always asking for my mother's health. And in one of our trips to Colombia, she actually insisted on visiting her. And as my mother had many health complications, I knew she would have given me comfort and she would have expressed her solidarity. She's doing that from wherever she is now. I met Leith at City College in 1985. When I was a student in the master's program in applied anthropology, I was 26 years old, newly arrived in the US as a permanent immigrant with poor English skills and 0 social capital and academic know-how in the US. She was not my professor at City College. She was working at the Sophie David School of Biomedical Education My professors and mentors in the anthropology department were Happy Leacock and June Nash. I went to City College because of them, because I wanted to study gender, and because of their scholarship and activism with women's issues, and because June was a Latin Americanist. I'm so grateful that she took me under her wing. June Nash told me one day that there was a professor who needed a research assistant and that I was a good candidate. Even though my English was not the best, June said, well, do you know about Marx? Do you know about inequality? You have participated in many struggles in Latin America. I think you should be a good candidate. So my job consisted of bibliography searches, photocopying, and organizing her files. But I was delighted. This opportunity gave me access into the inside of many libraries, the Schomburg Center, the Public Library, and other temples of knowledge, inexistent and inaccessible when I was a student at the National University in Colombia. Her leadership and example helped me and countless others to grow into their full potential. She was the person who encouraged me to go into graduate school and helped me to write my statement of purpose and gave me the best recommendation. Mentoring still works. I know this firsthand. Without my mentors, I absolutely would not be where I am today. I feel blessed because she greatly shaped my life in many aspects. One of those aspects was the struggle against recognition and the invisibility of women of color in academia. And because I learned so much about her personal struggle with racism and her activism and her experience as a nurse in Guatemala, you know, it was always an inspiration for me. The difficulties and successes that immigrant scholars, particularly minority women, have in academia I understood that better because of the intersections of role, of race and gender, but also of immigrant status. And that is an aspect that not many people take that into consideration. The careers of immigrant women in the academic world in the United States. We know that we are a minority. We know that less than 2% of Latina women are professors. For instance, at John Jay, more than 60% of our students are Latinos, but the number of professors is not represented there. But you know, in many other places, the number of Latinos, of academic women, is very small. But how could I learn from the everyday lessons that minority professors have gathered from their years of teaching at the college level and their struggles? Leith was one of 4 distinguished professors, female professors at the Graduate Center. There were many men, yeah, but for women, this is a very difficult situation. We had many discussions about the small everyday injuries and the large barriers and successes, you know, that we have in the classroom and beyond. And she helped me to understand the notion of diversity and inclusion in academia. The other thing was how bilingualism, instead of being a handicap, a disadvantage, is actually an advantage. And I ended up learning Portuguese in the process, and that has been very useful for my life. And how this bilingualism and this bilingual identity constructs and shapes our pedagogy as well as our social and professional identities. And she was also an immigrant. She was born in Jamaica. She was brought to Queens very early, but she came from a family of immigrants too. And she helped me to overcome my lack of confidence with accent and pronunciation. I gained commanding authority in the classroom, and I continued the constant struggle for inclusion when I felt insecure about the choices of words or the right English expressions and idioms to be used, mispronunciations that may obscure comprehension, as well as slips involving phrases that don't quite work in English. So she helped me to overcome these non-native moments by helping me improve my academic writing skills in English. And I'm very sad because she won't be able to see my book. Well, the book that I'm writing is in Spanish, but she was learning Spanish and she was so eager. And I was telling her that I was writing in a different way. I was trying to write poetry. I was trying to write in a different way. And she was so happy for that. And she told me, well, now you have tenure, you are a professor, you can do whatever you want to do. Nobody's going to tell you anything for that. So, so the other thing is that being trilingual actually was the reason why she invited me to be her official translator, official quote unquote translator. And we traveled together to different places in Latin America. We went to Colombia twice, to Brazil, Guatemala, and other places. And I think I was very privileged to be part of the project that she was in. And I think Pamela will explain later the RAYAR project, Understanding Racism in Latin America and the United States. And she had helped me to open a window on her direct activism, because by being her translator, I was able to listen directly to the questions that she was asking to people in the audience, to indigenous people, to Black activists in Brazil. So it gave me a different view on her, not the professor that she was very formal in the classroom, but a different kind of person when she was talking to people in the community and wanted to find information about them and see how they were living. But as a formal professor, I always admired the way she would present difficult concepts, and she would explain things. And when she talked, the whole room listened to her. So that was, I think, it was a treasure, I think, the time that I spent with her. And I always, admired her. So I really want to take this opportunity to thank her for her mentorship, for letting me participate in different kinds of projects that increase responsibilities and salaries, and especially the Harlem Birthright Program, where I had the opportunity to manage big data. And I had experience how to administer big grants and a large number of research assistants and participation with the community participation and writing research results collectively. One of the articles that came out from that research is one of the most important articles in the study of infant and maternal mortality and racism. So the other thing was that I think that she sent the strongest letters of recommendation for grants and for jobs that meant so much for someone like me who didn't have the social capital. I didn't have anyone to ask for letters. And I always have had difficulties finding people who will write them. And sometimes they will say yes, but they will never send them. So it was one of the things that my other friends, Latino friends, who are also immigrants, have many difficulties with. And that's also related to racism and to the obstacles and difficulties that immigrants have in academia. I think that as her mentee, I was always proud to watch her being recognized for her passion, her professionalism, and her endless pursuit of excellence in anthropology. I can only humbly hope to impart similar aid to those who would look to me for the type of effective leadership and encouragement. Her wise guidance and dedication to serving her students have set an example. I remember once that I ran into her by the elevators at the Graduate Center. She was running. She said she didn't have time to talk. We'll talk. She said, well, we'll talk later. And she was in a hurry to see one of her students present her work on Haiti because she was very proud of what her students did. And it turned out that we were going to the same event. I was going to listen to one of my students, and then there it was Javiela there giving a presentation, and an excellent presentation. I was there because I also wanted to see. I had returned from Haiti recently. Well, not Haiti, the border between the Dominican Republic and Haiti. So I was very much interested in what was happening in Haiti in terms of and the Dominican Republic in terms of racism and issues related to migration and citizenship. And in personal terms, she confided to me that one of the most difficult moments in her life was Manning's death, her husband's death. At Manning's memorial, she told me that she kept thinking about my dissertation, a study of Portuguese widows, and how many of the things that I wrote made sense to her directly now that she was a widow. And that was deeply touching for me. Recently, one of my Colombian students finished her dissertation, and she was crediting me in the acknowledgements for introducing her and bringing to Colombia Leith's work on gender and racism, in particular female-headed households. A work that nobody had done before in Colombia. There were very few articles on women, Black women in Colombia from an anthropological perspective. And but now we have, and thanks to her and her visits to Colombia, there is a group of Afro-Colombian women anthropologists who are using her work and who are translating her work. And I think that's very important to have that. And finally, you know, after so many years, they are using her theory and applying that in very productive ways in Colombia. So Leith was the best teacher students could ever hope for. I thank her I thank you for all your hard work and dedication. For the rest of my life, I'll be extremely thankful for having had a brilliant teacher like you. The lessons you have taught will be remembered forever, while your inspiration would always give me strength and the drive to continue dismantling inequality and racism. When I mentor anyone today, I try to highlight the strengths I see, strengths that they may not see in themselves, just in the same way that she did with me. I try to inspire self-confidence and help others achieve heights that they would never dream possible. Mentoring allows us the privilege, the ability to have a long-lasting, positive relationship, and the ability to have a lasting positive impact on someone else's life. I would like to close saying that did have a small problem. She didn't know how to dance Latin music. And well, Pamela was trying very hard to teach her, and I think she was succeeding at that. So yes, maybe she will let us know a little bit about that later. Well, thank you very much.
Well, I guess our next speaker, I don't know if we are going to talk about Leith's hesitancy in Salsa, but we will now turn our ears and eyes to someone that Patricia met on the Haitian Dominican border in a conference, and we'll go from there. So we're moving on to Javiela. Ready?
I'm ready. Thank you. Hi, good evening, everyone. So we cannot hold an event in honor of Dr. Mullings that's not participatory, involving all of our voices, even if briefly due to time constraints. Dr. Mullings called for work to be collaborative and participatory, from design all the way through implementation. As her student, she told me not to conjure up ideas in the library and then go into communities looking for implementation. Admittedly, what I'm doing tonight falls short, but it's in the spirit in which she pushed us. So at the end of my segment, I've asked AES to provide us all with the opportunity to unmute our sound for about 15 seconds. During those 15 seconds, I ask that we all raise our voices collectively in an effort to shine light on Dr. Mullings as she continues to ascend in her journey amongst giants. And I ask that we respond to a few questions. I'm going to post them in the chat. Give me 1 second here. And so we have the entire time that I'm talking, about 10 minutes, to think about these questions, see if they made it through.
Not yet.
Okay, 1 minute. Okay, it looks like it's too long of a file, so I have to put them in bits and pieces. So I'll do that as I'm talking. So in this collective reflection at the end, I'm going to ask that we do one of the following. Call the names of one or more of Dr. Mullings' writings that has influenced you and that you commit to citing, teaching, circulating. And this is per the call from Dr. Bolles in her article, Telling the Story Straight in Transforming Anthropology. Or I ask that you call the names of pieces that you've written in connection to Dr. Mullings, whether as a co-author, an advisee, a citer of her work, per the call from ABA President Dr. Barnes to cite her work and those who cite her. Or I ask that you share words that come to mind when you think of Dr. Mullings, or share words that describe her impact in your life. Or finally, call the names of ancestors, those who have passed, who you would like to embrace, protect, guide, or celebrate Dr. Mullings. And so think about any of those things, and at the end, we'll come together and vibrate our sounds together. I'm gonna try while I'm talking to post these, but I realize I probably won't be able to concentrate. So let me send the questions to Rafael and he can post them. I'm sending them to you, Kate. Okay, apologies for that delay. Such is the work of participatory conversations on Zoom. So I'm here today because of Dr. Mullings, no doubt. But first, I'm here today because my grandmother, Dolores Balbuena, came from Dominican Republic to New York as a domestic worker during the dictatorship of Rafael Trujillo. Because of her journey, my mother, Altagracia Richardson, a third grade Spanish immersion teacher, became the first to go to college in the United States. Being a Black Latina in this country in the 1970s, my mother was deeply aware of the racial terror here in the United States and at home in the Dominican Republic. And ultimately, the poems we read, the songs we sang, and the experiences I had eventually too made me aware even as a child. So I knew early on I wanted to dedicate my life to eradicating racial inequalities. As an undergrad student, as a master's student, I fumbled through years of how to fuse my commitment to active change with my academic writing. Herein enters Dr. Mullings. When looking for a doctoral program, which we all know is the search for an advisor ultimately, I encountered Dr. Mullings and her emphasis on work with and for the public that is collaborative and lends to real tangible improvements towards goals that have impacted, that those who have been impacted have outlined. She took my breath away. In her writings and in courses like Anthropology for the Public, Social Movements in the African Diaspora, we were all given strategies to work together to address the circumstances my grandmother, my mother, members of my community continue to face. Perplexed by anti-Blackness for so long, each opportunity I had, I wanted to address the why of racism. Dr. Mullings said, "You seem clear on many of the historical, political, economic, social threads that contribute to anti-Blackness, Javi, particularly in Dominican Republic. But what are people doing about it? And how can you support their work?" And so after years of kind of thinking about ways in which oppression have affected populations of African descent, particularly in Dominican Republic, particularly in the Caribbean, I turned my lens towards activism. And ultimately, my work ended up focusing on the 2013 constitutional ruling that revoked the citizenship of over 250,000 Dominicans of Haitian descent, and have continued to work closely with a group named Reconocido, which means to be recognized in the DR. So in addition to the many well-deserved accolades that have been and will continue to be mentioned about Dr. Mullings, a significant part of her legacy is that she ushered generations of us, not just through the doctorate, but into the field, not to observe, but to serve community needs and to work alongside. And she did this, as others on this panel are also highlighting, with an eye on the global scale. This is particularly important because of the ways in which we have been divided as a people of African descent. This is work that pushed us to go beyond North American exceptionalism. She talked to us very deeply about what it meant to be a scholar, even if you're of African descent, working with others in other countries, and how to not reproduce inequalities. She talked to us about helping to change life circumstances in lifelong research and collaboration, that it's not just about whatever work we are producing, but it's also about thinking about the life circumstances that people are living in. How can we help to support their writing? How can we help to support their lived material conditions? Not just, from an academic standpoint. And she helped to highlight that this is a lifetime of work. When you're doing participatory, collaborative work in community, that it's not about a 2-month project or even a 10-year doctoral dissertation project, that it's a lifelong commitment to eradicating wrongs that, as I mentioned, may go beyond the actual project that you're looking at, but the ways in which people are living. And so she helped us to find home, a space where we could do work with our communities that was important. She modeled it and she demanded it. Today, as we are in the midst of a pandemic, I'm thinking about the relevance of Dr. Mullings' work beyond its relevance for us as students, thinking about her work on the Sojourner Syndrome and her words of concern about Black bodies and Black life, stress in the context of police violence. Her words are extremely important. And in terms of bearing testimony, bearing witness, and amplifying this in collaboration, again, at this moment, when we think about the voices that are being excluded in the context of this pandemic, access to vaccinations, her emphasis on making sure that everyone is heard is critical. And so it wasn't just about protest in the large sense, but also about everyday acts of resistance and resilience. And this also extends beyond the paper. Testimony and these acts of resistance may be written on our bodies or on our tongues in song. And so in conclusion, because we only have a short time, and as Dr. Bolles mentioned, we want to have a conversation, I'd like to say that Dr. Mullings and her insistence on the survival of our stories lives on in the sounds of the beat of a drum, despite efforts to silence it, lives on in the sounds of capoeira, the dance and martial arts of Brazil, where Black Brazilians weren't allowed to practice fighting. So even beyond many of the written documents that we are highlighting, I think the spirit of her work that comes through the drum and capoeira, for example, I want to highlight. Dr. Mullings will forever be a supernova whose brilliance and light will continue to transcend space and time. So it will likely be noisy, and we may not be able to hear all individual contributions, but it's my hope that the vibration of our collective voices will resonate loudly. I'm not sure if the collective responses that I asked for have been able to be posted. I don't know. Yes, thank you, Kate. Okay. Yes, and so you have them there. I'll mention again that we can call the names of one or more of Dr. Mullings' writings that have influenced you, that you're committed to citing, teaching, circulating. You can call the names of a piece or pieces that you've written in connection with Dr. Mullings as a co-author, an advisee, a citer, and fan of her work. Share words that come to mind when you think of her. Share words that describe her impact on your life, and or call the names of ancestors, those who have passed, who you would like to embrace, protect, guide, or even celebrate Dr. Mullings. So I'll count to 3, and hopefully Rafael is ready for all of us to at least have the capacity to be unmuted. Mm-hmm. And then I think, there we go. Yep. Y'all are ready. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Here we go.
Oh, no.
Anti-racist
Easy, supportive,
changed all of our lives.
Sojourner Syndrome,
Mattering, caring about anthropology, anthropology,
Solidarity.
an anti-racist anthropology.
And it was
let nobody turn us around.
had a huge impact on my work on race and maternal health in Brazil.
Thank you, everyone. I felt that. I hope everyone felt that we are rising her up in this conversation, and we will continue to do so as we speak about her, write about her, dream about her, and carry her in our spirit and in our work, as I mentioned, for a lifetime as we continue to combat racism across the globe and in collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you, yeah. Now, Pamela.
Thank you. I was totally emotional when you did that, Javiela.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's just very hard to think that she's not with us and at the same time, the empowerment that comes from what you did and what Patricia said and what Catherine and Eileen are doing here with us, and all of you who joined us. It's just very wonderful and empowering. And I know that if she would be here, she would tell me, not too sad. And yet, yeah, I miss her. I miss her very much. One of the last emails that I got from her was in relation to my nephew, who was part of the anti-racist network that we were all part of. His name is Calla, and he had passed in August. And she wrote to me, and yeah, that she said to me that there are no words for the kind of pain that this brings about, because she was thinking of my brother, who she had met in Bolivia when Manin had passed. So they knew each other. She knew that she also had lost a daughter before Andres. So it was a very felt email. And that's the last time I read her. So she stays with me in a way that, yeah, she will always stay in my heart. And I really thank Aliyah and Michael that they're here, because I knew them through Leith, and I'm really glad that they're here. Thank you for the whole family and the sisters who she always traveled with all over the world, I think. I wanted to read a letter that I wrote to her the first time that we did a little memorial for Leith, the Red de Investigación Acción Antirracista. And I just want to read little parts so you know how that emotional part of this all is sort of connects with what I'm going to talk about later, which is sort of what, how we form the Red Antirracista. And I said to her, how hard it is to write to you now that you're not here. I remember the first time I wrote to you, Mark Edelman, your colleague and friend, had given me your reference. Charlie Hill and I had talked about the fact that there could not be an anti-racist organizing initiative in the Americas without including the struggle of indigenous and Afro-descendant peoples of this country. So Mark immediately understood, and he gave us your email. I wrote to you, and you were in each and every meeting that the Red de Acción Investigación Antirracista had. You filled us with a history of the struggle of your people, and you filled yourself with the energy of the struggle of people in Latin America. We really carved the space of dialogue, a profound dialogue about the shape that that this anti-racist initiative could take, especially now that the revanchist, what she called revanchist racism, was coming to us in a mega way. You and I said to her in the letter, talked about various things, and then we started the network, we consolidated the network, and in 2016, we dared, amongst all of us, and Patricia was there, we dared to jump into a research action process that translated itself into a book. This is the book. It's called Black and Indigenous Resistance in the Americas, From Multiculturalism to Racist Backlash. And I tell her here that your firmness, clarity, rigorosity in the analysis, in your analysis was always accompanied by your smile, your love for the people that you were starting to meet. Your analysis was always accompanied by this idea, urgent idea, that why, how we were going to use this analysis for organizational purposes. that's the way you really got involved in movement for Black lives. You talked to those young, committed people, and we saw you travel with them, and you gave shape to this moment of resistance that we're going through, we're living now. Your gaze and your attitude were always of support and inclusion, which is something that Patricia and Javiela have already said. You took everybody seriously. The personal was the political, and you were part of a generation, as Eileen was saying, of a generation of Black feminist anthropologists that taught us the value of interdependence, of mutual care. You really taught us until the end that you get things done with dedication, with openness, with courage, and with a lot of curiosity. You opened us your arms, and we Latin Americanized you, and now you are in our hearts, and your legacy and your love and rigorosity are staying with us, as Javiela and Patricia have said. That was my letter to Leith in January, I think. Our event was organized in her memory. So I agree with Patricia and Javiela that, yeah, she allowed us to be open and appreciate our dignity because she was so dignified. She valued each and every one of us. And she really believed in collaborative and participatory research, as Javiela said. And that's how we started talking about this anti-racist network that we were forming, that we all were co-founders. I just want to say this, but her form of engaged anthropology was very practical and fun. She said, don't mourn, analyze, and then organize, and have a glass of wine in the process if you can, of course, right? So that was Leith for me, very serious, but there was always a time to have a glass of wine and chat and be together, connect. I wanted to say that about her engaged anthropology and her commitment to collaborative and participatory research. In our first meetings, I remember telling Leith what was going on in Bolivia and why Charlie Hale and I thought we needed to have an Americas-wide network where the US needed to be included. Barack Obama and Evo Morales as first Black Indigenous presidents and Black and Indigenous presidents marked our first conversation. And this became a point of entry to start thinking continentally and start a relational analysis of Black and Indigenous struggles and resistances in the Americas. In both countries, racial violence broke out in reaction to these presidencies and the kinds of rights gains social movements had achieved at different moments in their respective histories. The Red de Investigación Antirracista en las Américas, of which she was a co-founder, was thus emerging in this process of what we call of racial recalcitrance, not only in the US, but hemispherically. This hemispheric perspective became crucial for the network's research goal to place racialized peoples in the US in relational dialogue with their Black and Indigenous Latin American counterparts. She came on board right away, so open to the challenge. And even though her research and political work had always been transnational, this time she decided to be Latin Americanized. It was her decision. And she was starting to speak Spanish. Patricia, you're right. How did she shape our network? She was part of a Comité de Sabios, committee of elders. The idea was that intergenerational teaching and learning between young and old from 7 different countries could occur. Her steady presence, support, and conceptual clarity in each and every meeting, from La Paz, Rio, Bogotá, Cali, Guatemala, Mexico, helped us form an emotional and intellectual container that we all benefited from, that's where dignity and value brewed. Her questions, she had questions to all the research teams, Leith questions, they called it, and our process of learning from each other were the catalyzer for the consolidation of the network. We had the organizing grid and goals, but she added methodology, conceptual clarity, etc. Research action teams adopted her, invited her to all kinds of activist academic gatherings. Their Black organizing and analysis in the US became important to Black and Indigenous organizing to our teams in Latin America and vice versa. Gradually, out of this experience of collective work and debate, a commitment to research and writing emerged. By that time, we were 7 organizations inspiring and guiding our work: Comunidad de Historia Mapuche, Coopera de México, Observatorio del Racismo de Bolivia, Observatorio de la Discriminación Racial and Proceso de Comunidades Negras de Colombia, Movement for Black Lives in the US, Criolla Brasil, Observatorio del Racismo de los Medios en Guatemala. For Leith, what was important all throughout her scholarship and activism was the issue of material basis of racial oppression. And this is the imprint that she left in our network. We can see this imprint in the chapter she co-authored with Charlie Hale in the book that I just showed you. The name of the chapter is A Time to Recalibrate, Analyzing and Resisting the Americas-Wide Project of Racial Retrenchment, and in our book that came out 2020. There she and Charlie said, our second overarching objective is to embed this relational analysis of Black and Indigenous peoples in a characterization of the broader political economic system of which they form part, both as victims of exploitation and dispossession and as protagonists of countervailing collective action. We seek systemic analysis that locates both peoples and associated racial dynamics front and center. Second quotation. In attempting to develop this relational frame, we begin highlighting the inherent racial dimension of neoliberal capitalism. Since its inception, capitalism has profited both from an actively reproduced racial difference, a characteristic that the terms racial capitalism helps to capture. The immediate next step is to pursue structural historical differences between Black and Indigenous peoples to acknowledge and explore site-specific variations within each group. Leith and Charlie talked about 3 processes also: securitization, financialization, and accumulation by dispossession are central to racial capitalism in this emergent era of racial retrenchment and recalcitrance. These processes, they said, contribute to the overall trend of deepening inequality in the global economy. They also explain how these processes come together to constitute a new phase of racial capitalism where the deepening of inequality is racialized. And finally, in her own chapter, in the same book, Neoliberal Racisms and the Movement for Black Lives in the United States, she leaves another imprint on the network. She talks about that if a hemispheric wide wave of racial retrenchment constitutes a new racial project, anti-racism in social movements and among allies will need to recognize the co-production of racism and capitalism. Rather than dismissing anti-racist struggles as identity politics, we have to step up and recognize this co-production. Here, Leith also makes us rethink organizing, coalition building, and allyship in a fresh manner and taking a step beyond identity politics. And I'm going to read my last quote, where she says, "A coalition of people of color requires that we not sweep difference under the rug, recognize the specific histories of various groups and think creatively about common roots and important distinctions, as well as how forms of oppression intersect. These initiatives exist within the broader context of a growing opposition to neoliberalism and Trumpism in many sectors of the general population. However, such efforts are impeded by the fragmentation of the left, the specter of unresolved issues of racism and privilege, and the inability of some of the white left to honestly confront the reality and consequences of structural racism in the US. These shortcomings are aggravated by a reluctance to test theory in practice and to be open to knowledge production outside the academy. The main takeaway is that the movement for Black lives, born of protests against police executions, and precisely because of their experience of living class through race, has in a few short years created a critique of the established order that offers insights into evolving modes of capitalism, not always evident to those who analyze society from a more privileged position. Most significantly, it is building coalitions around a program for the structural transformation of society. It is time to retire the term identity politics. Thank you so much for listening to me. And Leith, you're with us.
Well, thank you. This is wonderful. Reading some of the chats, everyone is just, the spirit is there. We keep saying she's not here, but she is here in our hearts and minds. And because we're moving what her ideas forward, and that's the important part. We're gonna open this up now to anyone who wants to make a comment or very short comments, I'm going to try to facilitate this, and Kate is going to unmute you when you, I guess I don't see where the little hands are, but we will try to do it that way.
Yeah. If you look on the reactions button, there should be a raise hand. And so if you'd like to say something, just raise your hand and then I'll unmute you. Okay. I'm gonna be the technological assistant.
Okay. Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay. So, hands? Anybody? One of the things, I guess, I just want to have everyone's attention that the full information about this on the Black and Indigenous resistance in the Americas, we've got the full ISBN number in the chat if you were interested in following through on that. Oh, let's see, Marcia, you want to unblock Marcia?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just blown away by the admiration and love. I am a part of the Jamaican family, and so we didn't grow up together, and we didn't really, but we had a wonderful summer the year we were both 11. And it's something that whenever we meet, we bring snippets of that back. But in Jamaica, with the Jamaican family in Jamaica, she was a legend. And none of us ever felt we could live up to her. And she was just so human and full of love. And I'm just very happy to hear this professional side of her. And thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Another comment? I know we're all just kind of almost speechless on the power of this this conversation, but can we just, someone else must join us. I mean, that's what the whole, we are doing, this is a collaborative project and we're not doing a very good job. Anyone?
Okay, hold on. I'm trying to get Sabia, but why can't I do? I think I need Raphael to help me because I'm not as there we go.
Oh, is Sabia on?
Yeah, Sabia. Yeah.
Hey, hi everybody.
Hey, Sabia.
I'll buy some time while other people think of something to say.
Thank you.
I want to say that I'm very honored to be able to cite Leith in a report that I just completed for the National Community Reinvestment Coalition. It's a national organization that was established in the 70s through an act of Congress. And I was hired as a qualitative researcher working with a bunch of geographers to create a report on the impact of the COVID virus on African-American businesses in 2 historic Black communities. And I was able to use her in the literature review. And it just gave me such a wonderful feeling to come full circle because she played such a tremendous role in my intellectual growth, politically and every other kind of way. And I was also able to cite a number of other Black women scholars on that report. And that's something that would not have happened without my presence being at the table for that. So just want to share that.
Thank you, Sabia.
Thank you.
Sure.
One of the things that Gabi had mentioned was about, is there another, there's another, Ellen, do you want to, it's another reference for an article that's in a volume that Eleanor Leacock and Helen Safa edited, and it's a piece called Uneven Development, Class, Race, and Gender in the United States Before 1900. So if you have not cited that, you can look for it, and it should be part of your reference list on how to historicize the work, because even in this COVID moment, it is an ongoing issue and struggle. And so this is an important thing that we have to remember, and this is a good citation to show the continuation of oppression that is gendered, it is raced, it is definitely classed. So we need to be mindful of that. I was going to mention something that Javi had mentioned. Okay, here's another one. Sabia, you want to? This is Sabia's giving out the literature review she did of the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, but it will be out online. So again, you can jot that down for your own referencing, and we'll keep on going. Thanks for that citation, Sabia. I appreciate that. I'm going to write that down myself.
Ken, I think, has his hand up. Yeah, and then Maureen. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, good. I didn't see the. So you have invited whoever is that. Who's some.
Ken, were you there? I lost you. All right. I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay.
Oh, now can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, hi everybody. What a privilege to be here with you all for this conversation. And just a quick shout out to Leith, who was one of my professors and was such a guiding force for me when I started writing my textbook. And I sat down with her, and she had quickly pointed me toward her article, Interrogating Race Toward an Anti-Racist Anthropology, where she had a section about anthropology textbooks and their deep, troubling framework for race and racism. So I was just, Leith really was guided me in that, and delighted to have a chapter on race and racism. And also, she really taught me about intersectionality. And so just absolutely thrilled to, have that for our students also in the class and inequality chapters. So Leith just really has shaped my thinking and my career. And so grateful to her for those things.
Thank you. There was another hand, Kate, that you saw?
Yeah, for some reason I'm having difficulty unmuting people. I don't know what's happening here. I'm trying to get Maureen here.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, there she is. Okay, good.
Thanks, Kate. Hi, everyone. It's good to see so many friends. And a shout out to Sabia here. I think Sabia, you must remember taking the theory class with Leith, because we're in the same cohort. And I didn't have the privilege of many of you to work much with Leith, so it's wonderful to hear what you're sharing. But I have a distinct something I owe to Leith alone, and that is we took in the fall the history of theory class with Ed Hansen, and it had many qualities, but clarity and organization were not among them. And so walking into Leith's class in the spring, contemporary theory, every week, it was just such a relief to have the theoretical rigor, the methodology, the analytical clarity. And then when I was ready, and when it was the day we took our what we called the first exam that fall, and I saw a question that Leith had prepared me perfectly for, and I could just write it out. It was just, wonderful. So I owed my first exam theory section to Leith Mullings. So I think I'm seeing some other people agreeing. Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen. Elizabeth, there we go.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted.
Yes.
Well, I was in a cohort that slightly, this started the year before Maureen and Sabia, I think. And, I failed utterly to take advantage of what Leith had to offer. I was terrified of her for no good reason except, my own massive insecurities. And, came to get to know her a bit much later, and that was such a gift. And so I think it was the year that, was it the AES meeting? Some meeting was in Merida, and somehow ended up in a little, van with her and Manning and a bunch of other anthropologists headed to Chichen Itza. And it was really around that time, and I think being in that kind of squished up van that allowed me to kind of, again, get over my own silliness and get to know her a bit better, and to lose my fear of her. And she later asked me to be on the a task force about race and racism in the discipline, which was a important for me in many ways, but again, that generosity in for someone who hadn't really worked with her much during my time at the graduate center, but in sort of placing me and allowing me to have that experience of being with these other people, I think was clearly very typical of the kind of things that she did. So a somewhat different experience, but I ultimately, got it together, and again, just really grateful that I had the chance to get to know her.
Thank you. I think, did Catherine have her hand up?
Yeah, Catherine. You can go ahead. Oops. Oh, we're not hearing you.
No, her hand's up, but
No, she's unmuted. I don't know what's happening. Oh, she's
Ask
muted.
her.
She's muted
Okay.
again. Let's see. Unmute. Oops.
there you go.
No, she's
Oh,
muted.
it's
There. Okay, there we go.
muted.
Okay, I don't know. I'm sorry, Catherine. I don't think the sound is working.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can do ask unmute.
No,
Try-
I think it's on her end because it's unmuted.
Oh, did Catherine, can you unmute yourself?
Her sound's not working.
Oh, is she talking? I think she's talking. Yeah, I can't lip read. So
Yeah. Oh well. I'm sorry, Catherine. I'm sorry. We have a few more minutes if there's anyone else that wants to say something. We're honored to have the family here, but we don't want to put any pressure on anyone to speak if they would rather just listen. But mostly it's really nice to have everyone here together and have
yeah,
it.
maybe Catherine can write what she's saying in the chat.
Yeah. Just got to write fast.
Oh, let's see. Riche, do you want to say what your Riche just did a thing in the feminist anthropology spring issue. Is called Cite Black Women and has intersectional voices. It also includes several pieces in tribute to Leith, and Riche encourages people to read and cite the authors who work in Leith's footsteps. Transforming Anthropology has a spring section dedicated to Leith, and the fall issue will have original articles that are actively engaging Leith's work. And so she gives the website for AnthroSource, so you can check that out.
Terrific, terrific. Thank you. Oops.
Okay.
Aaliyah just had her hand up and then disappeared.
Yeah, right.
There you are.
Oh, good.
Hi. So I just wanted to thank everyone for being here and for inviting us to join. And it's been really great to just hear from all of you. And I see so many names of people that I know and have met, and then also people who I've just heard my mom talk about, and never really had the chance to get to know you. But I hope that I will get to know you.
Hi.
And this is my daughter Lily.
I'm 6 and I lost a tooth.
She lost a tooth yesterday, so we're very excited.
And I got money in a toy.
Yes, okay. And and I know how important it was, how important her students were to her, and how important mentoring was to her, and it's so great to hear how it was felt from the other side. I mean, I certainly heard her side of it, but to kind of know what came out of her mentoring and what her students have gone on to do. She always loved to hear about all of your successes, and always felt that felt them as though they were hers. And, and I've sort of enjoyed listening to people's stories and again, like hearing it from the other side. So, you talk about how great her letters were. And I saw her from the other end, like painstakingly writing all of your letters. And, and sometimes I'd say, well, you can just kind of reuse stuff. Like, there's some sort of things that are common that you can just, and she's like, no, they each have to be very individual letters. And, and she would be like working on them over weeks. And similarly with like, people whose work she read and helped edit. And, and I have certainly been also on that end of her editing. And, and my students, so I'll appreciate her skills at editing because now they get that from me. And I think a couple people have sort of mentioned the dancing, and I'll say it wasn't just Latin dancing, it was dancing in general, but we were working on it and we were making some progress. I guess it's, again, it's been great to hear from all of you, and I hope to continue to hear from all of you. And many of you sent me letters, and and I read them all, and I passed them on to my family, and we appreciated hearing all of your words. And I love the campaign to cite her work. And I, like, my mom and I had actually started talking about us working together on something, even though I'm a lowly sociologist and perhaps not worthy, but we had some plans to do some stuff actually with the Sojourner syndrome. But I would love to look at what all of you are doing and how all of you are her legacy. And and perhaps at some point in the future I'll get to extend her work with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I think we have time for one more comment. Tina?
I don't want to be the last person, so I'll be very, very quick. The two words that always come to mind when I think of her are fierce and generous. Just the amazing amount of time and personal attention she gave to each and every last one of her advisees, and how that reverberates in places I can't even imagine she would have guessed. So I currently am living in a very small town in Western Wisconsin, and have written about racial disparities in child welfare and how all that works. And that work was obviously incredibly influenced by everything that Leith taught me, and it wouldn't have become a book or anything anyone wanted to read without her generosity in terms of editing, without her letters, and just recently have become possibly able to help make some change even here in Wisconsin. So our racial disparities are huge in the child welfare system, and I'm hoping to start to work with some attorneys in Milwaukee who are fighting some grossly racially disparate treatment where moms are having their kids taken out of the city and shipped, in some cases, 2-3 hour drives away, having rights terminated. And that, the work that I did is maybe going to help in some appeals that they're working on. So I'm sure that Leith could never have probably imagined that or guessed that would happen, but her work truly does reverberate, and just being able to really help us all get to places where we can matter, and we can take her fierceness, her clarity, her amazing rigor, and her scholarship, and just do even a tiny fraction of what she did is a great honor for me. So I'll miss her greatly, but just can't imagine a better mentor.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you. There's 2 points on the chat. Then I don't know, Elizabeth, has Elizabeth left? But she just wanted, Elizabeth Chin is now editor of American Anthropologist, and she wanted just to know that AA will be publishing a posthumous piece of Leith's that was part of a larger panel at Raising Our Voices, and they're going to be publishing the entire panel. And this is along with a co-authored piece by Diane Davis and Karen Scott. that's slated for the September issue. And then Daisy wanted us to remind us about the Medical Anthropology Quarterly that has this major forum in honor of resistance and resilience, and the importance of this, I might ask, is that they just discovered that no article had ever cited either the Sojourner syndrome or any of Leith's writing in that journal. So this also speaks to the invisibility of Black women's writing and intellectual work, regardless of the quality and quantity of it. So it finally it's come to light, and I'm glad more people will know the incredible work that she left behind, and that in fact that it's important for us to continue that mission, so that work won't get lost, okay, and being left to a stocking memorial lecture, you know, in 20 years time or something like that. So another note from Elizabeth that that Diane and Karen's piece is modeled after the Sojourner syndrome. So, and it's on obstetric racism. So again, we have good things to look out for, things that it's right on our plate. And again, it's the continuing of the work, keep the momentum going, because we've got a great model to follow.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. Thank you for those of you who came early at 6:30. I wished I could have offered you some virtual champagne or something while you were lingering in the waiting room. But we really, really appreciate all the support, the love, the citations. It's great to see everyone, and really to have this opportunity to honor a giant. And I have a feeling that this is not going to be the last. I think we have many more events coming up, hopefully in person. And I want to thank our panelists for their comments. And this is being recorded. We will probably have it available within the next 2 weeks on the AES website. And I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Panelists, if you want to stay for a debriefing, that would be good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Hi, Jackie.
Thanks, Kate. You worked really hard on this, and it's just been beautiful, a beautiful tribute. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
On behalf of AES and everybody that's been able to participate and enjoy this. Okay, I'll leave this to the participants now. Thank you all. I'm president of AES, and I'm really grateful for all of your wonderful participation and your words. Just quickly, in trying to do some research on the history of AES, I went through about 40 old anthropology news issues going back to the 70s and 60s, and Leith is everywhere. She has helped build our discipline in so many different capacities. Her leadership, her scholarship, her mentorship is actually our association, our discipline is saturated with her in all the best ways. And thank you for bringing that out today. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.